Hello and welcome to Friday Sews. My name is Peggy and this is my channel, Bespoke Ability Sewing. This is my, I think, 12th episode, and like I say, it's Friday Sews. Friday Sews was created by Jen from Today in Jen's Sewing Room as a way to bring the sewing community together to talk a little bit about what we are sewing, what we want to sew, and a little bit about life. So thank you, Jen, and thank you for joining me today. Today I'm going to do something a little bit different. I was tagged from Erin at Erin Sews for the This or That challenge. Now, I believe this was started by the Curated Curvy, or it may have been started by the Love to Sew podcast. I've read conflicting things, I'm not sure. But I got my questions off of Erin Sews' video, and I will link her channel below. So, but first let's talk about Jen's question for Friday Sews this week. And it is, you know, in the US at least, many schools are going back to school this week or next week. And do you have any outfits, back to school outfits that you made, or maybe your mom made or somebody else made, that you particularly like? And the answer to that is yes, I do. I do have things I liked. Do I have pictures? Not that many. It was a different era. But I went to public school in San Diego, California. So it was usually pretty hot at the beginning of school. And the beginning of school for us, way back then, was usually mid-September. Although now, I think it's already started. I know the schools where I live now started, I think, last week. But here's a picture of me in a dress my mom made. This was my first day of preschool. And I love this dress. It's a lavender and white gingham, buttons down the front of the bodice, and it has the top selling feature for me, at least, is it has a lavender velvet belt, which I thought was so fancy and so soft, and oh, I just loved it. So this was the first day of preschool, and then this is the first day of kindergarten, and I understand this is difficult to see. It's just a basic sleeveless dress. It has some piping on it, and I'm wearing my orthopedic shoes because my mother always had me in those. I don't know that I needed them. I don't know. But they're black velvet, and they lace up the front. So that was the first day of kindergarten. And then here's the first day of third grade. And my mom made both of the dresses I showed you, and she made this dress too. I used to call this a Cat in the Hat dress because I thought it looked like a fabric from the Cat in the Hat. It was white with dots on it in blue and red, and the dots were kind of wiggly at the edges. And it was, what was really cool about this dress, it was just very basic. Fitted bodice. It either had long sleeves or 3/4 length sleeves, I can't remember. And a gathered skirt. And I don't remember if it zipped or buttoned up the back. But my mom also she made this, and she also made what I would call a jumper, but many might call a pinafore, to go over this dress. And it was made out of the same blue as this. And so it made a different outfit. So I could either wear it this way without the pinafore or with it. And I just loved that. All these fabrics are Dacron cotton. So back then in the late 50s and the early 60s, I think Dacron was a precursor to polyester. It was synthetic. And my mom liked the blend with the cotton because she did not like to iron. I understand that. And so the Dacron cotton was less prone to wrinkles than just solid cotton. And then this is the first day of second grade, and you can't really see it, but there's red piping down the front of the dress. It's sleeveless, and there are my black velvet orthopedic shoes. And then the only other one I could find is this one. So this is the first day of third grade. And this is what I called my clash dress. It cracks me up that I think this was clashing. So it was pink, solid pink, and then under the flouncy collar and the bow, and there were flounces at the sleeves, the underside of those were white with red polka dots. And I thought, oh, it's clashing, it's mod. And it just cracks me up that that's what I think or thought. And then, as I was looking through photos, I found a picture of my grandmother. She was a school teacher, and this was in the early 1900s, and she's in the middle. And she was a teacher. And this is the first day of term for the kids she taught. So I just like seeing it. I have no idea if she made that outfit. She's long gone. And I don't know who the people are on either side, but they're wearing very plain outfits. But my grandmother has some style. Yeah. So I love that. But I remember a few other back to school outfits. Like I had, I had this dress. Like most of my dresses, it was a fitted bodice and a full skirt, and then a variety of sleeves and stuff. So I don't remember if it closed with buttons or with a zipper, but it had a bow for the back, fitted bodice. It was out of scarlet, and it was just beautiful. And it had 3/4 length sleeves with white cuffs. It had a white collar and a black bow at the neck. And I just thought it was so sophisticated, and I loved that dress. I was heartbroken when we gave it away. We gave it to a family friend who was a lot shorter than I was. I simply had outgrown the dress, but it was another dress that my mom made. It was another Dacron cotton, and I just loved that dress. And then later, and of course I don't seem to have any pictures, when I was sewing, I made one of my favorite back to school outfits was, I think, my sophomore year of high school, so 10th grade. It was knit, not a real stretchy knit, but a lightweight knit, red and white stripes. So it was a top that was a square neck with a little yoke in it, and a short sleeve, and then a belt out of the same fabric, and an A-line skirt. And I just love that. I wore it with white platforms. Oof, just thought it was great. But I don't have a picture of it. And then I got into making pants, and I wish I had that pattern, and I just don't remember what it was. But there were, all the commercial companies had this kind of pattern. It was high-waisted with a waistband, a fly front, and they were fitted at the torso and then flared and belled, and with a cuff or without. And I made lots of those and then wore those for the first day. And of course I made tops to go with them. So I have to look through my photos some more and see if I can find a picture. I just don't think I have one. But those are the first day of school outfits that I remember. Of course, I made a lot for my daughter. She went to public school from kindergarten through 4th grade, and then she went to private school and wore a uniform. But so during her first years, I made her a lot of clothes, and then in high school too. At any rate, that is it for the question. What about you? Have you any special memories of back to school clothes? Did you make them, or did your mom make them, or somebody else? At any rate, let's talk about the this or that challenge. So, like I say, I'm not sure exactly who started it, either the Curated Curvy or the Love to Sew podcast, but it's a series of questions about what you like to do, what your practices are, and being nosy, I like to hear what other people do. So maybe you feel the same way. This is broken down into 4 categories with a series of questions in each one. The first category, and I have to keep looking down because I have these written out. The first category is sewing prep. So, do you like stash busting or buying new? Oh, I like buying new. But I've liked buying new so much that I need to stash bust. So it's a little bit of both. Right now I am trying just to sew my stash, but occasionally I have to buy new pieces, and I like that. The second question is PDFs or paper patterns. Well, I've been sewing for a long time. I'm almost 65, and I think I was 8 or 9 when I started. And back then it was mostly big floor patterns. And so that's what I grew up with. That's what I was used to. And back then it didn't cost much, like maybe 99 cents to buy a pattern. Not on sale, just regularly. Although I do remember a couple small pattern companies like, Stretch and Sew, I think. And then there was a company that I don't remember the name, but it was Polynesian Patterns. And I sewed from that also. There were probably others, but I don't remember. But let's see, when did I get into? I want to say around 2009, 2010, I discovered Hot Patterns and Jolly. And I liked both of those. And I bought some of their patterns. They weren't PDFs though at the time, I don't think. But then during the pandemic, during lockdown, I couldn't go to Joann's and buy patterns on sale. So I started looking at a lot more independent patterns, PDFs. So I could get that instant gratification. Well, semi-instant. I could buy them right away, anytime, day or night, but then you have to put them together. And being selectively frugal, I won't spring to have a company print them out for me. Well, and that may change, but so far I have never done that. So I will print the patterns and tape them together. Yuck, but I'll do it. So a little bit of both. If I have a paper pattern that isn't an expensive indie pattern, I will cut out the pattern. If it's an expensive indie pattern, I will trace it. But I don't like tracing. Let's see. And the next question is cutting versus tracing. Oh, I prefer to cut, absolutely. And then the final question in this section is muslin or just go for it? A little bit of both. It depends on what the project is. I will muslin bodices, I will muslin dresses, I will muslin pants because I need those things for fit. But if it's a pattern block that I'm used to, that I know I need to add length to, I just go ahead and go for it. For instance, I'm 5'10", so I generally need, well, I always need to add length to arms, to the bodice, to the lower torso, to the legs. So I know that I need to do that. Sometimes I need to have the muslin because I'm not sure how much I need to add. Okay, the next section is fabrics. So, do you like in-store shopping or online shopping? Well, I prefer in-store shopping. I have many fond memories of going to the fabric store when I was a kid with my mom, and I just loved looking at all the fabrics. Back then in San Diego, I liked to go to Golden State Fabrics. I loved that store. House of Fabrics was around. Those are the two that I remember mostly. But I prefer in-store. But where I live now, there's a Joann's, which is poorly organized and doesn't have that much apparel fabric. There are a lot of quilting stores that have, a couple of them have some apparel fabric, but very little, and it's mostly pretty pricey. And then there's a Mill End store, which I like. It's a bit hit or miss whether you're going to find something or not. For instance, if you've been to the Mill End store in Oregon, in the suburbs of Portland, those stores are fabulous and have a huge selection. This is a big store, but it doesn't have as much selection. But sometimes you can find some really good buys. So by default, I like online shopping because then I have more variety. I use, when fabric.com was still around, I loved shopping from them because they had a huge selection, and if you met their price threshold, you'd get free shipping. I have done some shopping from Fabric Mart. I find that a bit hit or miss. I like to shop from Mood quite a bit. Elliott Berman, Style Maker Fabrics, Vogue Fabrics, So Much Fashion, French Seams. Sometimes from Girl Charlie, but I found the quality is a bit hit or miss. Sometimes from LA Finch Fabrics. I used to love Michael Levine Fabrics, which is in Los Angeles, but they're out of business. And I've bought from Minerva also, which is in England. So it takes longer to get here, but if you meet their price threshold, then you get free worldwide shipping, so that's great. And they have a huge selection. So if I need fabric right away, I don't do Minerva. But if I can wait, I do like to look at it. I've also bought from Guthrie Ghani, which is in England, and Apple Annie Fabrics, which is in Massachusetts, Vogue Fabrics, which is in Chicago. That's all that comes to mind right now, but I love looking at fabric. I wish I could touch these fabrics, but you can't have everything. Okay, the next question is, do you like knits or wovens? Well, I probably like to sew with wovens better, but I like to wear knits. And I like to sew knits too, so I'm all about comfort. And I find knits just so comfortable. And that's what I really like. So tumble dry versus hang dry. Well, like many people, when I buy fabric, I wash it in my machine and I dry it in the dryer. But particularly if it's a knit, after I've made the garment, I wash it on cold in the machine, but then I hang it dry. Because the Lycra will last a lot longer. Some things I put in the dryer, but I often hang clothing to dry. The next question is rotary cutter versus scissors. Now, I grew up just using scissors, but I have come to love rotary cutters. They're just so easy. And I still use scissors for cutting notches and marking things. But for the most part, I like using a rotary cutter, as long as I change the blade fairly frequently. Okay, the next section is clothing construction. So do you follow the instructions or just wing it? A bit of both. That's what I do. A lot of things I know how to make, so I just wing it. Like a t-shirt. I know how to make a t-shirt. Unless there's something different about it, like it has a twist or something, then I'll definitely need to look at the instructions. I usually read the instructions regardless of whether I think I need to or not. And then for many things I do follow the instructions, but if it's something with which I'm familiar, I just go for it. The next question is bias tape versus facings. Now this might be generational, but I'm a facings gal. I just like facings. I do bias tape, but uh-oh. I don't know if I left you there for a minute. My screen moved. But I like to do facings because I think it's a nice professional finish, and it's what I grew up doing too. But what I like to do is I always interface my facings and finish them somehow. And then either at the neck, well, always at the neck, sometimes at the arm size, if it's a sleeveless piece, I trim away about 1/8 of an inch. And that just helps with turn of the cloth. I also grade the seams after I've sewn them, press them of course, and I stitch in the ditch at the shoulders and the underarm seams if they're for the arms. And I also sometimes tack down the facings by hand. I just prefer that finish. Now the next question is serge seams versus French seams. Well, I have a serger. I use it all the time. But I do French seams sometimes, depending on the fabric and depending on the pattern. But I won't do French seams if I think they're going to be too bulky or if the seam allowance is just too shallow. So I'd say predominantly serge seams. The next question is button fly versus zipper fly. I was going to say I'd never done a button fly, but actually I have. In the 70s, there was a jeans company called Chemin de Fer, and they had a style, at least one style, maybe two, that had buttons down the front. So I made something mimicking those jeans, and I really like those. But now I have a bit of a tummy, and I don't want to emphasize it with a row of buttons, so I don't. But I don't really do zipper flies that much. I've done a lot of zipper flies, but I prefer either a zipper on the side or a zipper in the back of a skirt or pants. But between a button fly and a zipper fly, the zipper fly. The next question is hand sewn buttons or machine sewn? Well, confession, I have never successfully sewn buttons by machine. I tried. It's just a mess. And I'm sure you can get a special foot just for that, but I don't have it. And I find sewing on buttons kind of either a pain in the butt or meditative, because usually by the time I get to the point where I need to put on buttons, I want to wear the top or the dress or whatever. But I also like having some handwork to do, watching the TV or chit-chatting with people or just relaxing on the couch listening to music. So in that case, I do like sewing on buttons. The next question is fusible versus sewn-in interfacing. I have both in my stash. I use both, but generally I use fusible. Next question is snip as you go or all at once? I absolutely snip as I go. And then the final question for this section, press as you go or all at once? And I press as I go. The last section is called sewing habits. So the first question in this one is late night sewist versus daytime sewist. Well, when I worked, I pretty much had to sew at night or maybe on the weekends. But now I'm retired, so I could sew any time of day or night. And for the most part, I'm better off sewing during the day because I tend to do some silly things. You might say stupid things when I'm sewing late at night. I'm much more prone to making mistakes late at night. And the other thing I find, and this may be a product of age, is that if I do sew late at night, I get so into it that I have to get to a point where I make myself put down the project and go to bed. But then my brain's going a mile a minute and I have a hard time settling it down and actually sleeping. Well, who knows? So for the most part, daytime. Then the next question is slow and steady or frantic? Oh, a little bit of both. Depends on my situation. Usually I'm slow and steady. Occasionally I'm frantic. Usually when I have a deadline of some sort, or usually a deadline that I have imposed, like I want to wear this outfit tonight or something, then there's a bit of frantic sewing going on. I prefer slow and steady though. It's much more peaceful. And the final question is, do you tidy as you go or all at once? I should tidy as I go, but I don't. In fact, I'm messy. I am very lucky in that I have my own room upstairs for sewing, and people rarely go up there except for me. And it's a mess. I tend to get into a project and I'm throwing things right and left, and then I'm in a groove and I want to keep going after I finish a project, so I start another one and it's a mess. But I much prefer it when everything's cleaned up and put away. So I would say I'm an all-at-once person to clean things up. I'd like to work on tidying as I go. And I know that I am much calmer in my space when everything is in its place. So that's it. That's it for the this or that questionnaire. And I'd like to tag anyone who is interested in participating. So if you have a YouTube channel, please go ahead and make a video about it and let me know what you like to do and tag me in it if you'd like. Or if you have a few that you'd like to answer, do it down below in the comment box. I'd like to thank Erin again from Erin Sews for tagging me. This was a lot of fun. I had to think about these things. And that's about it for me today. Thank you so much for joining me, and I hope to see you next week. Bye.